Cool. Are you all able to see my presentation? Can you all see the presentation?
Yes.
Cool. Just wanted to make sure that you all can see this. Okay, cool. If you have any questions at any point during the presentation, feel free to stop me or just like get on the chat or any way to, if anything just doesn't make sense or any questions come up, definitely I want to make sure that this is interactive and I'm not just like lecturing you guys. So this is supposed to be interactive. So if anything comes up, definitely let me know at any point and we'll go from there. Okay, so we'll be talking about writing your abstracts and curriculum vitae or CV in STEM. So we'll start with academic abstracts and what those actually are. We'll provide some details about how to approach writing. So sorry, I'm gonna let some people in. Cool, yeah, we'll start with that. So what's an abstract? I'm pretty sure at this point, all of you have at least seen abstracts as you read papers for your classes or just general. Almost every research paper I've seen this far has an abstract. So I'm pretty sure you all have seen that. So an abstract is self-contained, short and powerful statement that usually describes a large work. It's a mini version of your paper. It's usually somewhere in the range of 100 to 300 words. So it's supposed to be very short and concise, a way of describing your research and summarizing your research. It's a condensed version of your piece of writing. That could be anything. It could be in STEM. It could be in social sciences. Doesn't really matter what the content of your paper is. It should highlight the major points that are covered in your paper. It should be concise. It should be concise. Again, concisely describes the content and scope of your work. That's I think the most important part about writing abstract is that it should be very concise and a very concise way of summarizing the research so that someone can concisely see the summary of your research without reading your whole paper. So how are they used? Abstracts, again, used in a variety of different ways in academia. They're used for submitting articles in a journal. So when you're submitting to an article in a journal, they would usually ask for an abstract before they see your full paper. It's used for applying for research grants. When you're applying for research grants, usually they'll ask for an abstract. It's used for writing book proposals. So if you were to write a book and submit it to some publishing journal, they'll probably ask for an abstract first. They're used for completing a graduate thesis or a master's thesis or dissertation. They're used for writing proposals for conferences. So if you're going to a conference or you're going to publish a paper in a conference, they'll usually ask for an abstract first. They're used for writing proposals for book chapters, which are kind of similar to a paper, but a little bit different because it's a chapter. But the key point is they're all of these different ways, all of these different formats ask for an abstract before you're able to actually go and do the thing, publish a paper, go to a conference. So you can accomplish any of those, they'll usually ask for an abstract. So what's the purpose of an abstract? It's usually allows the reader to quickly and accurately identify the basic content of your paper. So that's the main sort of purpose of an abstract, is that it should be concise enough to provide all the information that one will need to understand your paper or research project before they actually spend the time reading the whole project. It helps the reader decide whether or not to read the entire article or a paper. Again, it's a really good way of saving time. If you come up with, if you're reading, I'm pretty sure when you're doing your research, you're going to be doing a lot of literature reading and a lot of literature search. So it would not make sense for you to just read papers without knowing what the content of those papers are. So it's a really good way of saving time by just looking quickly, skimming through the abstract and getting all the information that you would need from the paper, and then deciding from there if it's actually worth your time to read the whole paper. It helps, another important part about abstracts is that it helps conference committees to group things together. So when you go into a seminar, seminars are usually, they all have different themes and different panels. So when you submit your abstract to a conference, it will help the committee sort of group that, group your talk to other talks that have similar sort of theme. So that's one way that they make use of abstracts that you would submit for a conference. It helps convince a grant or a fellowship committee that you should receive funding. Again, before, when you're doing a grant proposal, before you do a full grant proposal, they'll usually ask for an abstract, which is, again, very small, concise, condensed summary of what you're going to be proposing in your grant. So if you're not convincing enough in your abstract to get funding, they may not even allow you to move on to the next section, which would be like the full proposal. So it's a really important piece of academia in so many different ways. And that's what we're going to be talking about it today. So when to write an abstract, you can write it before research. So for example, when you're writing a grant, before you actually write the full grant, you can write an abstract, which is going to be the summary of the grant that you're going to write, and then propose that, or it can be written after research. So for example, when you're publishing a paper, usually you don't start with the abstract. You would have a research paper, you've done a research, you wrote it, and you want to publish that paper, then you can, after you've already written the paper, then you can write an abstract, which then can be submitted to a journal. So both of them are valid. It's just different scenarios. So it's good to know what your scenario is, so then you can know when to write, when you should be writing the abstract and when it's appropriate. So there's 4 main sections that are in abstract. We'll go through each one of them in more details, but here's just a quick sort of overview. So there's the first important thing is the main sort of component of the abstract, and the one that sort of comes first should be the purpose, like why what you did and why you did. You should be able to justify what you did and what was the purpose of it. And then the second part is will be methods and approach. What was your method to address your research? And then results and findings, and then conclusion at the end, or implications. So let's go more in depth with each one of those and talk more about what they actually mean. So we'll start with purpose. So what is the purpose? Again, this should be the purpose of your main research. So why do we care about the problem or a topic that you're going to be writing a paper about? Explain the purpose of your study. Why did you do the research? Ideally, in one sentence, state the primary objectives and scope of the study, or the reason why the document was written. So this is a really important component. You should, if this is not convincing enough, then why should I spend time reading about your research? So you should passionately talk about why anyone else, obviously you care about your research because you're doing your research, but you want to convince other people of why they should care about it. So you should passionately talk about the purpose and why anyone else would care about it. And then if that's convincing enough, then maybe someone would spend the time to actually read the rest of it. So it's really important to have a clear and concise purpose. And then the next section is methods. So the procedures and approaches that you've used in your research. What did you actually do to get your results? Again, this could be, for example, it could be I completed a series of 5 experiments, analyzed 3 different novels, interviewed 17 students. Those are all examples of methods. It all depends on your research, but it should be very short and like concise. Like this is exactly what I did, like 5 experiments or whatever, like whatever you analyzed, but make sure that it's really short and concise. And then clearly state the procedure or approach used in your study. And then the third section of an abstract is going to be the results and the findings. Here you'll describe your results, again, the finding of your experimentation, the data collected, the effects observed, and then as informatively and concisely as possible. It should not be longer than 1 or 2 sentences of like, this is exactly what I found. You don't need to go into depth in terms of like, this is what I found and this is what I think is the reason behind it, or like, this is the mechanism. That's not the place for it. This is just to show what your results are. So just concisely describe what your results are. I observed that X and Y increased with B and C or something like that. And you don't have to spend too much about the rationale and the mechanism behind it. That will come later in the paper. These results may be, again, experimental or theoretical. Just remember to make note of that in your abstract. So if it's just like something that is not going to be experimental, you don't have experimental data to support it, but you have theoretical data to support it, make sure that it's clear early on when you're describing your results, so that the person that's going to read the whole paper is not just like, you say something that that's not like, just something that's theoretical, but you didn't make it clear that it was theoretical. And then they go ahead and read your paper and they're looking for specific examples of experimental data and they don't find that, that would be a problem. So make sure that having theoretical results is totally fine. Just make sure that you make that clear early on. Give special priority in your abstract to new and verified findings that contradict previous theories. Mention any limits to the accuracy of those or how reliable those findings are, because that's usually the gap that you hopefully research or some other research will fill. And then the last portion would be conclusions and implications. So why would anyone care about the things that you're doing? What are the large implications of your findings, especially for the problem or gap identified in step 1? Why are the results of your study important to your field, or how do you relate to the purpose of your investigation? So doing any type of research the main goal of doing any research should be to fill a gap. So this is the place where you really shine and show that like, this was the gap. This is how my research is going to fill that gap, or how my research filled that gap. And this is why it's going to be really important for my field or any other sort of purpose that you're using for this paper. Often conclusions are associated with recommendations, suggestions, and both rejected and accepted hypotheses. So let's say your whole research found something that was totally different from what the literature have said in the past. That's really important. So that's going to be, you'll make a recommendation based off that. Like, this is what others have found in the past. This is how my research is different from that. This is what I would recommend or suggest based on what the findings that I found. So what do so this is kind of an example of what an abstract request will look like for, let's say, not a journal, but a society, which would usually have like a conference, and then they would have like you can publish a paper for a conference. So it would say like, oh, like something like this. I don't have to read it, but you can read that little text, but it will usually have like, okay, authors involved to submit, like it will be like, this is the word limit that we want the abstracts to be. This is for presentation at the annual X conference and for inclusion in the conference proceedings or something like that. So it would kind of like have something like this. They will specifically tell you the things that they're looking for. So just make sure to follow that and know that things may change when you submit your abstract. If things have changed it, like after that, that's totally fine, but just stick to it and make sure that you follow everything that they're telling you to do. So strategies for putting one together, making an abstract. So there's 3 different strategies that you can use, and they all have their ups and downs. They're all different, but it's all going to depend on your research and finding what strategy works best for you. Those 3 different strategies are: you can do cut and paste approach, you can do a research summary approach, you can do a component outline approach. And we'll just go into details about what those different strategies are. So the first one is cut and paste approach. This is where you cut and paste sentences from each section of the paper to create a draft of the abstract. So this will require you to write the paper first. So you've already written the paper. Now you can just take parts of the paper, like take out a few sentences and then put those together, and then make sure that it's extensive, you do a lot of extensive editing to make sure that it really flows and it's making sense, and it's not like a bunch of sentences that you put together that are kind of like fragmented, you know what I mean? So it will require a lot of editing at the end, but the most important thing is you need to have the paper first before you can use this approach. The second approach is the research summary approach. This is where you write the abstract as an independent piece. You edit to make sure that all sections are presented. So this would be a really good approach if you were to do a proposal, if you were to do a grant proposal where you have to write an abstract before you do the full proposal. So it will be a totally independent thing. So this would be a good strategy for that. And then the last component is the last strategy is component outline approach. This is where you write the abstract in parts. For example, you write the purpose, the method, the finding, and then you edit with intentions to bring in the parts together into a cohesive account for work. You should add evidence work to make the abstract flow and read smoothly. So they're all going to be different. So you'll write the purpose differently, the methods differently, but at some point they all have to come together and fit really well. So make sure that everything is readable and is flowing really smoothly. So here's, I'll provide some examples of what different abstracts look like. So this is a STEM abstract that was submitted for a journal. So it would look something like this, not very long, 200 to 300 words. You can read that on your own, but what I would recommend is at some point, take this or any other example abstract and see if you can identify the different sections of abstract. So see if you can identify what the purpose is, what methods this person have used, and then the results and the conclusions. So if you can highlight those differently and identify those, that would really help you understand the different components of the abstract. Here's another example for humanities. Again, text and word length is kind of the same, but the approach may be a little bit different because they're just different disciplines. Social science one, different example. Again, the text is usually about the same, 200 to 300 words. They're all kind of the same, but the content will be different. Okay, any questions about abstracts before we move on to the second section of the presentation? Okay, I'm assuming no questions. At any point, if you feel comfortable asking a question, definitely stop me, raise your hand. I don't think I can see everyone, but just unmute yourself and just say, hey, I have a question, and we'll try to address. Okay, I guess someone asked a question here. Yes, the slides would be available. I'll make sure to make that available to you guys. I'll send an email after the presentation or at some point to make it available to you all. They should all be on Gaucho Space, I would assume. But if not, I'll definitely make sure that they're available to you all at some point. All right, cool. So the second section of our presentation would be about CVs and creating a CV. Again, I'm assuming you all have seen this at some point, so things should be kind of familiar, but at any point, any questions come up, just unmute yourself and just say hi, and we'll go from there. So what's a curriculum vitae? The curriculum vitae is your, again, academic accomplishment in one organized file. So think of it as an academic resume. Again, it's not a resume, but think of it as an academic resume. So resume is much shorter. It's very specific to a specific thing that you're applying to. A CV is much more intensive. It's not specific to anything. It has pretty much it's a lot more intensive. It has a lot more information than a resume. So your CV is the most important thing that you should take away from this presentation is that your CV is in a constant flex. It should be updated regularly. It's your academic identity. So it's going to change all the time. Things will come up. You'll remove things, add new things, but like things from like the things that you had from high school should definitely not be in your CV. Your CV should be all of your academic things from college and then upwards. So when you go to grad school and all that stuff. But the important thing is that it's going to be changing all the time, and that's okay. And that's how it should be. It should be changing because you're, again, learning and coming up with new experiences. Your CV should not contain any information, awards, or achievements from high school. That's what I just said. This document is for your work from college and moving forward. That's really important. So what are some of the important things that usually CVs have? They should have contact information, education, research interest, publication, including work in progress, research experience, fellowships, honors, awards, teaching experience, leadership, presentations, related professional experience, professional memberships. So if you're a member of SACNUS or some other committee like that, you can definitely include those because those are really important for research. It's really important to know that at this stage in your career, your CV will likely not have all of these sections, and that's totally fine. So please only include the sections for which you have content. If you may not have all of this, but whichever you have a content for, definitely include those. But just know that you might not have all of these different components, but they will come at some point. So organization is key when it comes to CV. Like almost every CV that you've seen in the past or you will see would be totally different from one, like they'll all be different from one another. So, but the really important thing is that everything should be really clear. They may have different sort of formatting and things like that, but they will all have the same sort of information and details, and they'll all be very easy to read. So again, organization is really important for CVs. So font size should be consistent throughout the document, sections in chronological order, beginning with the most recent, and then it should be tailored for each use. And important information at the beginning. So all the important information that you want the person that's going to read your CV to see first should come at the very beginning of your CV. So those are highlighted early on. Just know that when people are looking at CVs, they're probably looking at more than your CV. They're looking at multiple different CVs and comparing those. So they may not have time to see everything. So if you put all the important things at the back, they may not even get to it. So make sure that all the important things that you want the person to read are up front. Be sure to save anything you feel may be important for your CV. So again, your CV is in flux, but your CV should be in a document separately. And as you go through and you're doing things, if you see things come up that you're like, oh, they're really important, I would like to include this in my CV, save those in a different folder and collect those. And then when the time comes to update your CV, you've already saved up information that you thought were really important for adding to your CV. Update your CV whenever you're applying to a new job or a new opportunity, or you can update it twice a year, whichever comes first. So if you're applying to 4 different jobs, try to update it each time that you're applying to a job. If you don't get to apply to anything, make sure you're still updating it at least twice a year. Have a master CV document that includes everything. And what that really means is have a CV that you literally just put all the information in. And then when you're applying to a job or a specific opportunity that requires a CV, then take a copy of that and then tailor that to whatever thing that you're applying to. But you should always have a master CV that has everything in it so that you're not losing information that may be important for a specific job that you're applying to. Save all the CV versions with the material that you add to your CV, because those are going to be really important. Always save things, even if you feel like you apply to a job and then you get that job, make sure to save that version of the CV and then move on to other versions, because those are, that development is going to be really important. And we'll make sure that you're not losing any really important information. So some general rules about CVs is there's definitely should not be any abbreviations. So like let's say UCSB should not be a thing. You should clearly write University of California, Santa Barbara, or so on and so on. So no abbreviations, no age, no marital status, ethnicity, professional emails, addresses only. So if you have a Gmail account from high school that has some really weird names in it, please don't put that on there. It should be very professional. Put items in reverse chronological order so that all the relevant experiences that you've had should come first. Only use certain sections when appropriate. So if you're applying to a specific job, don't just take your master's CV and then just submit that to it. Make sure that you're making that CV very tailored to whatever thing that you're applying to. And if there are sections that are relevant to that, then include those sections. If some sections are not relevant to that, then please take those out. Always check with the faculty mentor for discipline specific styles. So different disciplines have different styles, and they may even, some things may be normal for one discipline that may not be normal for some other discipline. So make sure that you're communicating with your faculty member or mentor, because they will know what, they'll know a lot more than I or someone else would, because they are in your discipline. So always communicate with your faculty mentor. So some do's and don'ts of resumes. So use different, again, do not use different font sizes. That's, again, the most important thing is you want to make the job of the person that's going to read really easy. There's nothing that's distracting them from the content that you want them to see. So don't mix different styles, features. Those are all going to be distractions. You don't want those. Don't use colored papers. Again, keep it simple. Don't exaggerate things. The reader will definitely know that. So be as authentic as you can. Do update your resumes often. It's really important to, again, it's in flux. So the more you update it, the more often you update it, the better it's going to look. Ask professional staff to review your CVs, because that's really important. Have your faculty mentor or PI review your CVs. And I think that's probably the most important, because your faculty mentor knows your discipline again. So they will know what's appropriate for your discipline than someone else. So even if you have a professional staff review your CV, again, it's really important to then run that through with your mentor, and your mentor knows your CV. So creating your CV. So again, these are all the details that we talked about. You should have contact information, education, research interest, and so on. So here are some examples. So Victor here, you can see there's the department that Victor's in, so the left corner, and then their contact information, telephone, email, very professional email, their UCSB email, and then education in reverse chronological order. So this person is now in a PhD program. They're going to start with that, their master's and their BA in human development. So it's in a reverse chronological order, and then their research interest. Elizabeth here is, again, the same, but you can see, you can definitely see some differences. So instead of starting with education, this person started with research interest. It's totally fine, again, but the most important thing is that it's both of them are really clear to read and are not very complicated. They're very simple. And they started with research and then education. Education, you can clearly see, is in reverse chronological order. So some, just a quick note about GPAs. They're not necessary, but do not include your GPA unless it's just stellar. Like you have a really high GPA, that means usually 3.8 or higher. If you have that kind of GPA, then you can include that. You can see that Elizabeth definitely included that. Their CVs, their GPAs 3.9 to it was 3.9 in undergrad, and master's 3.9. So if it's really, really good like that, then it's impressive. You should include that. If not, then if it's less than 3.8, then probably don't include that. Again, the important thing is you are advertising yourself. So include all the things that you think is going to make that reader really want to hire you, the things that are going to make you really impressive. That's the key thing to keep in mind as we go through this. And I think someone just asked a question in the chat. Let me quickly read that. So this person asked if they completed an honors thesis or placed for a research poster in a discipline that's different than their graduate program they're applying to. Should that be an exception to including it in our CVs? I would say so. Like, I'm assuming like the two disciplines are like, I guess if they're totally different. So if you did your honors thesis in anthropology and now you're applying to physics graduate program, you should probably not include that. Like, it's probably not going to be relevant to the physics department that you've done honors thesis in anthropology. But if it's something kind of similar, so let's say your honors thesis was in biology, and now you're applying to a chemistry program, that may be somewhat relevant. So I guess you can okay, so one is in humanities, the other is in psychology. That's okay. Those two disciplines are definitely close. So humanities and psychology are kind of close to each other than physics and like anthropology. So definitely include that. I would say definitely ask other people too, but in my own I guess I would say my opinion would probably be to include those, because humanities and psychology are somewhat similar to each other. They're not very far away from each other. So, and it's also an honors thesis. So it's very something that's very impressive. So I'll definitely say, yeah, include that. Cool. So some CVs, as we said before, some CVs contain research interest near the top under education. That was Elizabeth. You can see Elizabeth started with her research interest first before education, and then Victor started with education and then research interest. So it doesn't really matter which one comes first, but what should matter is which one do you think would make you, like, which one do you think would be very attractive in your own case? If your research interest or something that you're like, I want this person to see my research interest first, then include that first. If it's not that important, you want to have the education be first, it should be education. Sure, again, it's all about advertising yourself. So whichever you feel like is going to be, is going to make you a better candidate, then do that. Yeah, so the research interest is just key terms in your research interest. So what's your research interest? How are they described in your discipline, theory, methodology, and things like that. And then you can add your contact information, research interest to your CV, like the two examples that I just provided. So let's just review of some of the other components in the CV. Check the time. Again, the most important thing, everything should be in a chronological order, beginning with the most recent. So whatever if you did a research project, your research project this summer should come first than the one that you did last summer. Everything should have full citation. So if you are doing, in terms of publications, your publications should be fully cited. Use consistent formatting for all publications. Can include work in progress. So if you're doing a project right now, you can say that in progress and then have the title of the project. If you've already submitted to a journal, then you can say submitted and then make sure to state the journal that you submitted it to. If your work has already been accepted to a journal, but it has not been published yet, then you can say in press, and that will show that your publication has been accepted, but it hasn't been fully released yet. So in terms of your research experience, again, your research experience should also be in a chronological order, beginning with the most recent one, and then the date and period of position title, major duties in research or work achievement. So make sure that it's very, like, when you're describing the major duties or research that you've done, don't have like full sentence, like don't have make sure that it's very concise and you're picking out your words very wisely and you're not just saying things, because you have very limited space and you want to make sure to convey the research that you've done in that very limited space. Research presentations, you can have your research presentations in one section or subdivided subdivided by type of research that you've done. So it could look something like this, where you have the title of the presentation and then summer undergraduate and graduate research colloquium, and then the date, and then poster if it was a poster, or you can say oral in parentheses at the end. Use either subheadings or denote that it's a poster or oral presentation in parentheses, because that's important. If you did an oral presentation, you don't want to have the reader guessing whether or not you did a poster or oral presentation. Make that clear in your title. And then for fellowship and honors received from different organizations, institutions, programs, and academic achievements should all be included here. So for example, UCSB Edison Summer Research Program, Summer 2019, Hispanic Scholarship Fund 2019, those are all honors that could all be included. Dean's Honors, Fall 2018 to Spring 2019. So whatever the honor is, and then the date. Leadership experiences, this is not a resume, so only include items relevant to your future research. Again, when you're writing your CV, you're not writing for a specific job. So it may not, you want to make sure that it's relevant to the things that you're doing. So here are some examples of leadership positions that you can include. So for example, if you're a president of some company or some organization, that's really important. You should include that, and it's relevant to your future career. If you're an organizer for SACNAS, for example, that's really important. As a scientist, SACNAS is a big big sort of not a committee, but big conference. So definitely being an organizer of SACNAS would definitely help you in your future research, in your future career, because people know that SACNAS is a big conference for STEM. Teaching or tutoring experiences, if you had those, make sure to have the date, the period of position, position title, major duties, and achievements. Again, in a very concise and short way. And then related professional experience, be sure the professional experience is related to your future career goal. If you include it, because if it's not related, then you should probably not include it. So everything should, again, be related to what you're working towards. What's your goal in terms of your career? Each item should be in a chronological order, beginning with the most recent volunteer experience that relate to your research interest, community, institutions, professional affiliations. So if you're a member of a conference like SACNAS, then include those too. Just asking, someone asked a question. If we are a leader of an organization, should we describe what kind of organization it is? I'm not sure if I understand that. If you're a leader of an organization that you think, like, let's say you want to pursue a graduate studies in biology, and you are a leader of a volunteer organization that teaches biology to elementary schools in Santa Barbara, then definitely include that. And you should definitely make sure that you're describing it well enough, but don't be too wordy. So like describe what the position was, what your duties were. So like organized lessons, like things like that, like what your duties were, but don't describe the whole thing and what the program was. People can look things up, but have the full name of the program. I guess that's what I would say. So some final thoughts. There's no correct way to format a CV, and you can modify it to suit your field and personality, but there's definitely an incorrect way to format a CV. So there's definitely no correct way. You can have different formats, but there's definitely an incorrect way. If things are all mixed up, if font is different from one section to another, those are all not good things. So there's definitely like things that just you should not be doing, but in terms of the way you format and the way you present your content, there's really no correct way. It's all context dependent. But in general, the most important thing is keep it simple. That's really important. Don't overcomplicate things. Don't have too many things that distract the reader from really understanding your content. So starting this summer, we'll ask you to turn in multiple drafts of this CVs. Ideally, by next summer, you'll have a solid draft that you can use for your graduate school application. So that should really help. It's really important to just have multiple drafts and just keep working on it. Again, your CVs are in flux. So the more you spend time on it, just editing and adding new things, the better it'll be when the time comes to apply to grad school, because CVs are really important when you're applying to grad school. So here are some sample CVs. Again, I think we've shown something similar to that, but you can notice some key things. So the education, this person started with their education, and then you can see that their GPA is 3.8. So they included that. Again, stellar GPA included. If it's less than that, don't include it. So it's make sure you're advertising yourself and you know what your strength and weaknesses are. So always show your strength. And then their university, and then they have their honors and awards. Again, you can have, let's say this person had a much better presentations than honors. You can put that before honors. So it's all about, you want to have all the really important things, your strength at the very top of your resume, so that the person that's reading those sees all the important things that you want them to see first. So yours could be different, but it should be a way of you showcasing your strength. So if your research publications are better than your honors and awards, then that should come first. There's a different example. Again, the same concept. They're all simple. That's really important. Keep things simple. Don't have too many words. Keep it really simple. And the way you sort of present the different sections really all depend on what you want the person to see. And yeah, that's it. But any questions? I'll stop sharing. Any questions about CVs, abstracts, anything that we've presented today? Okay, you can always put questions in the chat too if you don't feel comfortable, or send them separately in an email, whatever. But I just want to make sure that you all have support and your questions are answered. Okay, I'm assuming no questions. That's all good. Cool, cool. Okay. Well, if anything comes up, definitely let me know, but we'll leave it there. Yeah, and there's definitely a lot of chance. Okay, someone. How should we save our CVs? Again, it really all depends. So you can save it as a PDF if you're like sending it to, if you're like, if it's a part of application and the rest of your application is all in a PDF format, then do a PDF format. But a lot of them are in Word. But the only two formats I've seen are PDF and a format and a Microsoft Word format, not like any other formats. I don't think I've ever seen any other formats like Google Doc or something like that. That may be a little tricky, but it's definitely, it could be in a PDF or a Word, but I don't think the formatting that, like having the way, like the format you save in shouldn't be a big deal if your CV looks better and looks good. But a good question. All right, cool. I won't keep you all if you don't have any other questions. So, but feel free to email me, reach out to me, anything, if anything comes up, I'm more than happy to review your CV or just like go through some basic things. If you just want someone else to look at it, I'm more than happy, but I'll leave it there. I hope you all have a wonderful day, the rest of your day. Oh, someone has a question. Yeah, Sophia, you have a question?
Oh yeah, I'm not like a McNair scholar or anything, so I was wondering if I could have your either like contact information or just a way to get the slides and stuff.
Yeah, for sure. I will make sure to, here's my contact information. There's my email, but I'll make sure to send an email to all the people that attended today with the slides. Cool. Have a good one, everyone.